You may be seated. All right, you may continue with your direct examination.
Ms. Bly, Investigator Bly, on the overhead is Exhibit 287, and when we broke, we were discussing the USAA banking application access that you have notated as occurring on 12/08 on January 25th, 2019. And that was that information you received deep within the database of the phone?
Yes, in the knowledge C database.
And does that correspond with the web page printout that we saw earlier
It does.
with regard to unblocking accounts through the USAA app?
It does.
Showing Defense Counsel 10I for notification. And without objection, we tendered, 14I in as states next as a business record certification.
That's correct, no objection.
That is correct, Judge.
All right, what's been pre-marked for ID is State's Exhibit 4I will be, 14I, will be moved into evidence as State's Exhibit 288 in evidence.
Commercial witness. Investigator Bly, I'm showing you Exhibit 288, which has already been entered into evidence. Have you previously reviewed this document?
Yes, I have.
I'm going to go ahead and put it up on the overhead.
Okay.
With the judge's permission. May I? Now, pursuant to the exhibit that's currently on the display, Exhibit 287, we can see that the USAA Bank was accessed for 723 seconds. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
And that was at what time?
12:08 in the morning.
And I'm showing you, for the record, Exhibit 288, which is a business record from USAA Federal Savings Bank with an attached record certification, page 2, dated January 24th, 2019. Looking at the third entry from the bottom, 124.19 at 11:08. Before we go any further, do you know what this CST stands for up there?
Yes, it means Central Standard Time.
And Central Standard Time, is that an hour backwards or forwards from us?
So if it's 11:08 here, it would be 12:08 here. So,
Okay.
12:08 here in Florida.
So the USAA bank record is in Central Standard Time.
Correct.
Okay. But in Eastern Standard Time, it would be 12:08.
Correct.
Okay. And what does this record purport to show?
That an iPhone app was somebody used biometric fingerprint to gain access to the app, and that it was successful.
And that was done within that 723 seconds that the USA app was accessed.
Yes.
I'm showing Defense Counsel 7G for identification purposes. We tender 7G without objection into evidence as a business record certification from USAA Savings Bank.
All right. 7G, no objection, defense?
No objection, Judge.
All right, so what's been pre-marked for ID is State's Exhibit 7G will be moved into evidence as State's Exhibit 289 in evidence.
And may I publish?
You may.
I'm showing 289, Exhibit 289, page 2, in the overhead. And just for the record, Ms. Bly, the dates and times here, are they also in Central Time?
Yes, according to this, yes.
So that would be 12:19 p.m. Eastern Standard Time?
Correct.
And this record would have been generated among that period of time where the USAA application was open on Chen's iPhone?
Yes, I believe so.
Showing defense counsel 10J. State would tender 10J as business record certification for PNC Bank.
No objection?
No objection, Judge.
Okay, what's been pre-marked for ID is State's Exhibit 10J will be moved into evidence as State's Exhibit 290.
That was 290?
Yes, 290.
Thank you. Ms. Bly, may I publish, Your Honor? I'm placing 289 back on the board for the account that was added. Do you see an account number there?
I saw
Oh,
it
yeah.
blurring.
Let's see. There we go.
I do.
Okay.
Right here.
123-537-6242.
Yes,
It says Grand Amato checking,
yes.
and I'm now showing you Exhibit 290. Do you see an account number there?
Yes, right here.
Same account number? 123-537-6242.
Yes.
Now, I'm almost done. Have you had the occasion to, you've testified previously about the iPhone 8 being able to be unlocked via fingerprint and by passcode. Based on your training and experience, field study, et cetera, are you aware whether an iPhones have been successfully unlocked with a deceased person's finger?
Yes, you can.
And can you tell us what factors can impede the ability to access a phone with a finger?
Well, so the way Touch ID works is when you first enroll the fingerprint, the capacity touch sensor of the home button pretty much takes like small photographs of your fingerprint, including details that you can't see with your eyes. It doesn't store this photograph anywhere. It just uses a mathematical equation to convert that into like a number. And then when you're trying to unlock it, it does the same process. And it matches that and checks to see if it matches the database. So if the fingerprint starts to decompose, then you can't. You wouldn't be able to authenticate because it wouldn't match.
Decomposition, we're talking about a significant period of time.
I am not a forensic fingerprint
I understand.
examiner, but
What about if the finger was cleaned off? Would that help Touch ID to function better?
yes, because you would be able to read better the fingerprint.
I tender the witness.
Shapiro, Cross?
Good afternoon, Investigator Blay.
Good afternoon.
Now, earlier, when you first took the stand, not earlier, but when you just took it, we went over some photographs that were credit cards and checks and that sort of thing. Isn't that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, you determined that none of those photographs were created after December 22nd of 2018. Is that correct?
Correct.
you saw photographs of the interior of the Amato home, isn't that correct?
Yes, I did.
And you saw what Grant's computer looked like, isn't that correct?
Yes.
Seemed like a pretty complicated system there they had, is that correct?
Yes.
Not the average person, would you say? It seemed a little more tech savvy?
Yeah, it had a lot of hard drives.
You would say that a tech savvy person would know that if you deleted a phone call, that it would not be permanently deleted, correct?
Objection, speculation.
I don't know, some people, different people know different things, so, I mean.
You're familiar with the Blink application, is that correct?
Correct.
And you're familiar with the fact that the Blink application does not record anything, correct?
No, not on the webcam itself, but you could save a video from the app if you're looking at a video, if it alerts you, you could save a video from it. And also the Blink company records, keeps track of.
So you're saying that you could record it if you took the extra step to do so?
Yes, correct.
But the Blink application, as it runs and surveils, doesn't automatically record, correct?
I've never tried to do that, so I don't know. I wouldn't know.
Okay. You stated earlier that you were familiar with the application. Are you not very
I
familiar?
am familiar with the application. I'm not familiar with all the specific functions of, but I believe you're able to save the video if you're watching it.
But you understand that part, but you don't know whether it actually records in real time?
It records somewhere in real time because the Blink company is able to keep that information.
And you're 100% sure of that?
Well, I have seen records of Blink with photographs of surveillance.
You've never been told by anybody in this case that there was recordings from that Blink application, have you?
Not recordings.
And you created this timeline that states 287, correct? The one with the different colors? With
Correct.
different rows that are different colors?
Yes.
That was your creation, correct?
Yes, it was.
You didn't put on there the portion about the fingerprint access, correct?
The fingerprint accessing the USAA?
Correct.
No, because that wouldn't be, that timeline only shows knowledge C database and health database, so that wouldn't be in there, or the Blink access wouldn't be in there either.
When you created that, you were not told that that existed, were you?
No, what existed?
The fingerprint access to the USAA application.
I did
told
not
about
know
that.
anything about the fingerprint. That came up later.
That did come later, correct?
That did come up later, yes.
When did that come up?
I wouldn't know the exact date. I believe Mr. Leo would be able to.
When were you told about it? You just said you were consulted about it?
I don't know the specific date.
Recently?
Fairly, whenever I think whenever I initialed the paper, or around that time and date, maybe a couple of days before.
Was that recent?
I mean, recent is relative, so I don't know.
Would July 18th of 2019 sound?
I believe it was maybe a couple of days earlier.
Okay, so about 2 weeks ago?
Yes, I believe so.
Judge, could I have one moment? Nothing further, Judge, thank you.
Any redirect? Any questions, members of the jury? Write them down. Our jurors have some questions for you. Here, can you get Exhibit 253? Here, let me do this one instead. Was it determined in the investigation which finger thumb Chad used to unlock his iPhone with?
No, it does not. We don't get that information from USAA.
Also, which finger, well, that question was Chad to unlock his iPhone with. So also, which finger did Chad use to access his USAA app?
We weren't able to determine that. I wasn't able to determine that.
And the next question is the same thing. Was it verified what finger Chad used to get into his phone? Which one was it? Did Blink, the company, have any recorded video?
No video, not video.
All right, Exhibit 253. As it pertains to Exhibit 253, the pictures of the checks, credit cards, et cetera, could you confirm that metadata may be changed using various applications?
It could be changed, yes. Usually, if you go like specific to like a more tech-savvy user, goes specifically to the to the zeros and ones of the computer and changes things. Yes, you could do that.
Would you also agree that changing the metadata, i.e. date pic was taken, may be changed rather easily?
I know how to do it, so it's easy for me. So easy is relative. It's not something that you could go without any like fancy applications or anything and change it.
Is a database file like a registry file on a computer? How are they similar or different?
So that database is a general term. You could have a database showing oh.
Just fine, just stay where you're at.
Okay. Database, you could have, for example, a database of phone calls or a database is a collection of records of whatever. You can have a database of recipes. So registry files are specific files that Windows uses and that Windows likes to reference often that has information about system or about software or about user, like user preferences or user accounts. So that's how they are different. It's two different things.
Can you tell when the calls from Cody were deleted from Chad's phone?
No, I cannot. The way I found that they were deleted was by comparing the call database with the Knowledge C database, and this one had it and this one didn't. So, and it had every other call that was.
What is the Blink application?
The Blink application is surveillance system that you can put at your house or wherever, and you can monitor it. For example, if I have a camera and someone walks by, the camera will trigger and will send me a notification on my phone, and I can look at that notification, and so.
Can you tell what time the calls were deleted, from Cody to Chad were deleted?
No, I cannot.
Okay. Chad's iPhone had been connected to Grant's bedroom computer, correct?
Chad's iPhone on Grant's? No. I was not able to determine that. I did not. I looked at the different devices, and it was not.
Okay. All right. Any questions based on those questions, Mr. Leo?
Just one. It was Cody's iPhone. Was it Cody's iPhone that was connected to Grant's computer?
It was Cody's iPhone,
Not Chad's.
not Chad's.
All right. Cross.
Investigator Bly, you were able to determine the last dates that these photographs, like the ones up there, were modified. Is that correct?
That's modified, yes, correct.
The last used date for them, when they were even accessed, that's the dates that you were able to determine, correct?
Created, accessed, and modified, or created and modified.
Right, so they were never modified after that date, correct?
No, unless somebody changed no.
It's interesting you say that because you said that you noticed that certain parts of this phone were changed, correct? Like you said that certain calls were deleted?
Yes.
Right, so wouldn't you also be able to determine if certain photographs, metadata were also altered?
No, because I would have to look. I mean, there are two different things. One is a photograph, and the other one is a database. There are two different artifacts, two different.
So you would ever be able to determine if the metadata had changed for these files?
Well, if I have the original and I have the other one, I compare the hash values, and if they are different, then something changed between the original and the...
You never uncovered any evidence that they were modified, correct?
No?
That those dates that were the last modified dates for the photographs, you never determined that they were modified in any way, correct?
No?
There was a photograph of one of the cards. It was Chad Amato's USAA card that had a December of 2018 expiration date. Is that correct?
December 20. I would have to refer back. It's possible.
Sorry, let me correct myself. There was a...
That's 253.
Thank you, Judge. You're looking at states... I'm sorry, which was that again?
Exhibit 253.
Exhibit 253. You're looking at Exhibit 253, is that correct? Investigator Bly?
I guess so. I didn't keep track of the numbers.
Okay. You see that on this card, it expired on December of 2018, correct?
That's what the card says, yes.
No further questions.
Any redirect? Any further questions from members of the jury? Okay, write them down. All right. There are more questions from our jury. Cody's iPhone was plugged into Grant's computer. Could you determine if Cody's iPhone had ever been plugged into Grant's computer during the life of the computer before January 24, 2019?
If it was not on the records at all. So it would have to be a while back because I had devices that were plugged in for like a year ago, a year before, a year prior. So most likely no, that lockdown file wasn't there too. So that's another reason that leads me to believe that it wasn't.
Was Grant's phone evaluated?
Yes, it was. Investigator Stewart evaluated it.
Was Margaret's phone evaluated?
Okay. There were two phones that Margaret had near her. One of them was, we didn't have a passcode, but it was still on, so we were able to obtain a partial after first unlock extraction, which is pretty, it's like most of the data on the phone, pretty much. And so we did evaluate that one. The other one was in a pool of blood, so it was off when we got it. We were not able to we were trying to get into the phone up until we turned in the items for trial. So no, we did not get into the other one.
Please confirm that the exhibit photos in Exhibit 253, which is what's on the projector now, were based on Grant's PC and transferred to the ADATA thumb drive, not on Chad's iPhone.
Correct. Correct. This came from item N7, which is the computer, and they were also in the thumb drive.
State, do you have any questions?
Was there anything of any evidentiary value in Margaret's iPhone or Grant's iPhone?
No, Margaret's iPhone wasn't used pretty much late that evening or afternoon, evening. It wasn't used, I think maybe in the morning, but it was just normal work and communication. And nothing on Grant's phone. I believe it wasn't anything until 2 or 3 in the morning. Investigator Stewart did that.
Any cross?
None, Judge.
All right, any more questions, members of the jury? None. May this witness be excused? Excused and released?
Subject to recall.
Okay, so excused and subject to recall. Thank you very much, Ms. Bly. All right, your next witness.
Nicholas Stewart?
Mr. Stewart, you're still under oath, so if you could please have a seat in the witness stand.
Thank you. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Now, we've discussed the work you did on the iPhone, on Chad's iPhone. I want to draw your attention to some work you did on a different piece of equipment. That would specifically be a Surface Pro. Do you recall doing work on a Microsoft Surface Pro?
Yes, I do.
And with regard to the examination of the Surface Pro, can you tell us, did you take photographs of that particular exhibit?
Yes, I did.
And did you follow the protocols as they're laid out with regard to making a digital write-protected image of the content of the Surface Pro?
Yes, I did, although it's different than what it would be for the majority of computers.
Okay. So tell me, what was different about the Surface Pro than usual?
Okay, so normally with computers, you can actually take the hard drive or where data is being stored out, and so we can work directly off of it instead of the device itself. With the Surface Pro, you can't remove it. So because of that, where we normally would connect the hard drive to a write blocker, had to use different things to do that. So one of which that I did use was, it's a software called Paladin. And so Paladin I had loaded onto a thumb drive, looks like a little thumb drive, and I had to plug that directly into the Surface Pro itself. And instead of, when you turn on a computer, it's going to boot to the operating system with the hard drive that's on the device itself. Instead of doing that with Paladin, I can turn it on, boot it to the software that's on Paladin itself, so I'm not going to make any changes to the actual evidence or data that's on the original device. So after doing that, it starts up, it looks like a normal start screen, however it says Paladin, so it's a little different. And using that, I can then image or make a forensic image / copy of the hard drive that was within the device itself without making any changes. And after it's done copying, and I copy it to an external hard drive, so not the drive that's on the device itself, it's one that I'll also plug into it, my own, so that I leave the original intact, and I'll create the image onto that external hard drive. Afterwards, that it's done, I turn the Surface Pro off, so and then remove the Paladin. So
Showing defense counsel 10W for identification purposes. May I approach the witness? Investigator Stewart, I'm showing you 10W for purposes of identification. Take a look at this and let me know if you recognize what's contained in those images.
I do.
And how do you recognize this?
I took the pictures.
And what are these photos of?
The Surface Pro.
The Surface Pro that you conducted an examination of?
Yes, it is.
Are these photographs fair and accurately depicting the Surface Pro when you worked on it?
Yes, they do.
10W is next.
Objection? All right. It's been pre-marked, and that's a composite exhibit of State's Exhibit 10W will be moved into evidence as State's Exhibit 291 in evidence.
May I publish?
You may.
Investigator Stewart, I'm showing you on the overhead Exhibit 1091. So is this a photograph of the Surface Pro that you conducted your forensic examination on?
Yes, it is.
Page 2, is that just another photograph of that?
Yes, sir.
Page 3, same thing?
Same thing, just opened up.
Page 4?
That is of the screen of the device, yes.
Now, was there anything that you had to do extra to be able to evaluate the data, other than the Paladin USB plug-in, in order to evaluate the data on the Surface Pro?
Yes, there was.
And could you tell us what that was?
Yep. So after using Paladin and getting the copy or the forensic image of the device, when I went to view it in our software, it was encrypted. So in order to decrypt it or get the code or key, I had to actually power on the Surface Pro, in which I document with pictures when I turned it on and turned it off. And I had to use the command line, which is just, it's something that you can type in certain commands to get certain things to happen. One of which was to get the key or the password for the encryption, which that is what that is right there. It's 48 characters, in which I was able to use that password to decrypt the forensic image that I had made.
What does it mean when something's encrypted?
Basically, it's just a way to keep unwanted people out. It protects the data that's stored on that device.
You were able to get past the encryption nonetheless.
Yes.
And did you generate hash values associated with the image on of the hard drive?
Yes, I did.
And after the decryption, did those hash values match?
So the hash value of when I got the image to, if I was to hash that device now, would be different because I had to power on the device. However, the hash values of the copy that I made do match to the image that I had done originally.
And when you finally powered up the Surface Pro, is this a picture of the home screen?
Yes, it is.
Showing defense counsel 10S as Sam for identification purposes. I have a question, witness. Investigator Stewart, I'm showing you what's been previously marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit 10S. Do you recognize 10S?
Yes, I do.
How do you recognize it?
My initials and date in the corner.
And what does item 10S purport to be?
It's a portion of the report that I made for the Surface Pro.
And is this a fair and accurate paper printout of the digital information that was contained in your report?
Yes, it is.
You tender 10S as states next.
No approach, Judge.
As 10S for ID will be moved into evidence as State's Exhibit 292 in evidence.
May I publish, Your Honor? Okay, I'm going to place on the overhead page 3 of Exhibit 292. I'm going to zoom in here, hopefully. Okay. So I want to draw your attention, Investigator Stewart, to approximately the middle of this page where it says acquisition and verification.
Yes, sir.
Can you explain to the jury what these long digits are? What they mean?
So those are hash values, and what a hash value is, it's almost like a digital fingerprint of the data that you hash. So you can hash any file or hard drive, and the purpose of doing that is so when you get the hash value and then you create a copy, you want them to match. And as long as they do match, then they are an exact copy. And so that's where the hashing, it's a mathematical algorithm to verify that both files do match. So if the numbers match as they do here, then there's a scientific certainty that they are going to be the same. If they didn't match, then there would be some kind of difference.
And further down on this report, does this report reflect the time zone that the Surface Pro was set for?
Yes, it does.
And what time was that?
Eastern time zone.
Now, In addition to the time zone and the hash values for the Surface Pro, were you able to determine whether there were any user accounts on that particular device?
Yes, I was.
Showing defense counsel 10T for identification purposes. May I approach the witness? Sir, I'm showing you 10T for identification purposes. Do you recognize this item?
Yes, I do.
How do you recognize it?
My initials and date.
And what does item 10T purport to be?
Some of the user information on the Surface Pro that I examined.
And is this item a fair and accurate paper printout of the digital information contained on the Surface Pro?
Yes, it is.
Tender 10T is states next.
No, Judge.
What's been pre-marked Friday as State's Exhibit 10T will be moved into evidence as State's Exhibit 293 in evidence.
May I publish?
You may.
Now, Investigator Stewart, using item 293 that I have here on the overhead as guidance, can you tell the jury what unique user account you were able to identify on the Surface Pro?
Light. Yes, sir.
So when you turn the computer on, it says light, you type in your password.
Yes, sir.
Showing defense counsel 10U for identification purposes. And approach the witness. Investigator Stewart, I'm showing you what's been pre-marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit 10U. Do you recognize this item? It's a composite.
Yes, I do.
And how do you recognize it?
My initials and date on it.
And what does item 10U purport to be?
It's web history.
Speak up a little bit.
Web history for the Surface Pro.
And is this information that you retrieved from your forensic examination of Mr. Amato's Surface Pro?
Yes, it is.
Is this a fair and accurate paper printout of that digital information?
Yes, it is.
Your tender 10U is states next.
Any objection?
Hearsay, Judge. Objection.
Can I see it? Objection overruled. What's been pre-marked for ID as State's Exhibit 10U will be moved into evidence as State's Exhibit 294 in evidence.
May I publish? So, Investigator Stewart, you reviewed the search history from Grand Amato Surface Pro,
Yes, I did.
and that's what's here?
Yes, sir.
All right, I'm placing 294 on the overhead projector, and let's begin at the bottom of the page, if it's ascending in order. And can you tell from this document, the first time the first entry for a web search, what time that was?
Yes, I can.
What is that?
January 25th, 2019 at 2:54:56 a.m.
And can you tell what website was visited?
For that one would be Gmail or Google. It's a Google search of Gmail.
And when did Gmail stop being, well, when was the next unique website after the Gmail? Yes, ma'am.
Would have been at 2:56:33 a.m.
Okay, and then above that,
2:57:06 a.m.
now, can you tell me the websites that were accessed started at about 3:02?
At 3:02:06 a.m. it was MFC or MF Cams. It's a Google search.
After that?
At around the same time, it's Miss My Free Cams contest.
And the next entry above that?
It says Addie Suites homepage on myfreecams.com.
And about at 3:06:46 on January 25th.
That's for an account restoration and the same website, myfreecams.com.
What are these entries reflecting here?
Payment forms online.
Between 3:07 and 3:08 in the morning on the 25th,
Yes, sir.
and the site being visited at 3:08.
Yes, sir.
Now, I want to flip to page 10 of Exhibit 294. What is this block of information we're looking at here?
It's referring to web history on Chrome, and it's also off the myfreecams.com website for purchasing, looks like for a total of $599.99.
Is that up here at the top right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And that was at 3:08?
Yes, it was.
Okay. Now, Mr. Investigator Stewart, we have the list of websites that were visited on that Surface Pro. Did you find any records of any news sites being visited?
No, I didn't.
Any records about a search for, say, Chiliota police presence or top stories?
No, sir.
Nowhere on that Surface Pro.
No, sir.
Nowhere on the on any of the entries. Are there any of those types of searches?
Not that I was able to find.
Now, is the Surface Pro one of those devices that can connect to like a cellular network as well?
It could, but not this one, not this specific device.
Okay. And the Surface Pro, then how would it have access to the internet?
Via Wi-Fi.
Now, I'm showing defense counsel 10V as in Victor for identification purposes. Investigator Stewart, I'm showing you 10V for identification purposes. Do you recognize this document?
Yes, I do.
How do you recognize it?
My initial and date in the corner.
And is this, what does this document purport to be?
Showing networks that were connected by the Surface Pro that I examined.
And is this a fair and accurate paper copy of the digital information that you obtained in your extraction?
Yes, it is.
Tender 10V as states next.
Any objection?
None, Judge.
It's been pre-marked for ID as State's Exhibit 10V will be moved into evidence as State's Exhibit 295 in evidence.
Investigator Stewart, can you tell the jury what a MAC address is?
MAC address is a media access control address. It's how you can identify if certain devices were connected to a specific network.
And that's not Mac like Macintosh, right?
No,
Okay.
no. So pretty much any device that you're going to connect to the internet will have a MAC address of some sort, and you can view that if on the network side to see if it did connect to it.
And as pursuant to your forensic review of the Surface Pro, were you able to determine what the MAC address was for that particular device?
Yes, I was.
And is that something that is easily changed?
No. For this device, it wouldn't change, no.
Say that again?
For this device, it wouldn't change.
And what is the MAC address for the Surface Pro item N6?
So for that specifically, it's going to be a combination of numbers and letters, but it's 4C:0B:BE:21:13:A0.
May I publish Exhibit 295?
Yes.
And you had testified previously that this exhibit is network profiles that were on this particular device. Is that true?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And if we go to the one that is the second from the bottom, public's customer,
Yes, sir.
what does this column here tell us, where it says profile created, time and date?
So that's going to be when the device first connected to the network.
Okay, so 12/25 of 2018 is the first time that that Surface Pro connected to that public's Wi-Fi.
Yes, sir.
And then if we go to the next column, over, what does that tell us?
So that's going to be a time that it also probably last connected. So around the time that he would have probably disconnected from the network.
So 4:58:57 a.m.
Yes, sir.
May I have a moment, Judge?
Cross.
Good afternoon, Investigator Stewart.
Afternoon.
There's nothing inherently wrong about encryption, is there?
No.
It would be used to keep a personal device private, isn't that correct?
That's correct.
Nothing illegal about encrypting a personal device, isn't that correct?
Correct.
And if someone stole the device, the encryption ideally would keep the person who stole it out of your device, isn't that correct?
Yes, sir.
A legitimate use of encryption, isn't that correct?
Yes, sir.
Judge, could I have a moment? No further questions, Judge.
Any redirect? No, ma'am. Any questions, members of the jury? Write it down. All right. One of our jurors has a question. Was the Surface Pro encrypted using the program BitLocker?
Yes, it was.
Any questions by the state? Any questions by the defense? Any more questions, members of the jury? Yes. Approach. All right, we're going to grab an exhibit, exhibit number 295 briefly. All right. Referring to exhibit 295, what is the defendant's Wi-Fi at 2112 Sultan, and when was it last accessed?
So I don't know exactly what the Wi-Fi would have been named at the house. However, I never saw it on this device. I don't believe that it's on this device.
Any questions? Defense?
None, Judge.
Any more questions from the members of the jury? All right, may this witness be excused and released? All right, thank you very much, sir. You're excused and you're released.
Jericho fine.
All right. Mr. Fine, if you could come forward, raise your right hand, be ready to be sworn.
You solemnly swear or affirm that testimony you're about to give will be the complete truth, so help you God.
Yes.
Have a seat in the witness stand, please. You may proceed.
First, please tell us your name.
Jericho Fine,
Would you please spell your first and last name?
Jericho Fine.
And Mr. Fine, where do you live? And if you prefer to give a town, county, city, that's fine.
I live in Orlando.
Now, did you know a person by the name of Cody Amato during his lifetime?
Yes, I did.
And do you know a person by the name of Grant Amato?
I do.
Tell the jury how you know Cody and Grant Amato. What I'm asking is if you can give us some sense, describe your relationship with Cody and Grant Amato.
I would have considered them my brothers. I met them a couple years after high school through a mutual friend. I graduated in 2006, so it would have been around like 2008. We would play video games together, go out to dinner together, hang out like almost every day before we started moving on into careers and things like that, but still talking regularly through the group texts, and still going out to dinner every week or every other week and hanging out and playing video games together.
Very close with them.
Yes.
I'm going to ask you to try and move your chair forward a little bit more, and I know you're talking to the left, but actually the microphone that picks you up is that box right in front of
Oh,
you.
it is? Okay.
Okay, so if you could lean forward just a little bit
Yep.
more. All right? Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you see Grant Amato in the courtroom today? And if you need to get up or look around, and
I do.
would you please identify him?
He is the man over there.
Sitting at that counsel table in the chair that's closest to the wall?
Yes.
Please let the record reflect that Mr. Fine has identified the defendant. Now, Mr. Fine, did you also know Chad Amato and Margaret Amato during their lifetimes?
I met them briefly, once when I went over for Cody and Grant to help me build a computer.
What I have are States Exhibit 6W, 6X, and 6Y for identification, and ask you to look at each one of those and tell me if you recognize the people that are depicted in those exhibits.
That's Margaret.
And you're referring to what document now? 6W?
6W.
Okay.
6X is Chad. 6Y is Cody.
I'd offer these into evidence as State's Exhibit, Your Honor.
Any objection?
None, Judge.
All right, what's been pre-marked for ID as States Exhibit 6W will be moved into evidence as States Exhibit 296 in evidence. What's been pre-marked for ID as States Exhibit 6X will be moved into evidence as States Exhibit 297 in evidence. What's been pre-marked for ID as States Exhibit 6Y will be moved into evidence as States Exhibit 298.
Let me show you what's been introduced into evidence as States 296. Is this Margaret Amato?
Yes, it is.
Let me show you what's been introduced into evidence as States 297. Is this Chad Amato?
Yes, it is.
And let me show you what's been introduced into evidence as States 298. Is this Cody Amato?
Yes, it is.
Now, I want to change topics and direct your attention to December of 2018 and ask you, did you have an occasion to go on a trip to Japan?
I did.
And who did you go with anyone?
I went with Cody and Grant.
When did you go on the trip?
It would have been December, the beginning of December, like December 18th.
And you went with Cody and Chad? Cody and Grant Amato?
I did.
What was the purpose? Why did you go to Japan?
We like a lot of the pop culture and a lot of things that come from Japan. It's been a trip we've been talking about for years. It was originally supposed to be the entire group, but as the date, got closer, people had to back out for, obvious reasons, career-related things and other life events, and it just ended up being me, Cody, and Grant.
Tell the jury, please, what, during the time that you were in Japan, what was the weather like?
It was very cold.
Now, during the time that you were in Japan with Cody and the defendant, did the defendant, Grant Amato, wear gloves?
He did.
Would you describe the type of gloves that he was wearing?
They were like a black leather winter gloves, kind of stylish.
Showing counsel 6S for identification, 6T for identification, and 6U for identification. May I approach, Your Honor? Let me show you what's been marked as 6S, 6T, and 6U. Ask you if you recognize these photographs. And first start out with 6S.
6S, I took this picture with everybody in Miyajima, and Grant is giving a peace sign off the side. This was us just exploring. I don't remember exactly where it is, but we're walking up to a shrine. I took this picture of us, that's Cody and Grant walking up the steps to the shrine in 6T. And this appears to be a selfie outside a restaurant we ate at, 6U, and that's the gloves.
Okay. And are those photographs of true and accurate depictions of that which they purport to represent? In other words, photographs of you and Cody and Grant in Japan?
Yes.
Okay, I offer these into evidence as state's exhibits, Your Honor.
Any objection?
No objection, Judge.
What's been pre-marked for ID as State's Exhibit 6S will be moved into evidence as State's Exhibit 299 in evidence. What's been pre-marked for ID as State's Exhibit 6T will be 300 in evidence. What's been pre-marked for ID as State's Exhibit 6U will be State's Exhibit 301 in evidence.
Let me first put 299, State's Exhibit 299 on the overhead. And what does this photograph depict?
It's us in front of the floating torii gate in Miyajima.
And who is depicted in the photograph?
It's me, Cody, and then Grant's hand.
And Grant's hands are, or is wearing the black leather gloves that you described earlier?
Yes.
Let me show you State's Exhibit 300. And once again, can you tell, did you take this photograph?
I did.
And who was depicted in the photographs?
It's Grant, and behind him there's Cody walking up the steps to a shrine.
And which one is Grant, the defendant, depicted in this photograph?
Grant is the one in the foreground with the sunglasses on and the beanie.
Closest to you.
Yes.
And once again, is he wearing the black gloves that you observed him wearing while on the trip to Japan?
Yes.
And State's Exhibit 301. Tell the jury about that. What does that depict?
That is Grant taking a selfie, and we actually bought T-shirts in that artist shop behind him, and it was right outside a vegan restaurant we found.
And once again, is that the defendant wearing the black leather gloves that you've previously described?
Yes.
Can you give the jury some sense of how often the defendant would wear those black leather gloves while in Japan? I'm not talking about minute by minute or hour by hour, but just on a daily basis, can you give us some sense of how often he wore those black leather gloves?
Most of the time we were there, it was cold enough, and he was wearing those gloves.
Let me put up on the overhead what's already been introduced into evidence, states 191 and states 193. I'm putting up 191 right now. Do those appear to be the gloves that, once again appear, do they appear to be the gloves that the defendant was wearing while in Japan?
Yes, they do.
And the same question with respect to States Exhibit 192. Do they appear to be the gloves that the defendant was wearing in Japan?
Yes, they do.
And Mr. Fine, what I'm going to show you is States Exhibit 203 and ask you, do you recognize 203?
I do.
Do they appear to be the gloves that the defendant was wearing while in Japan?
Yes.
No, Your Honor. Now, at some point, did you, while in Japan, at some point, did it appear to you, well, let me first back up and ask this question. Were you with both Cody and Grant, the defendant in this case, pretty much every day, and were together during the entire trip while you were in Japan?
Yes, there are a few nights I went on like dates, but yeah, I was there with them the whole time.
At some point, did you observe what appeared to you to be Grant Amato's mental condition or demeanor, be depressed?
I did notice that the energy wasn't as high as I thought it would be.
And when was that? Can you tell the jury about that?
The later half of the trip. I know a few days before we were to come back, we were to go to a museum, like for an animation studio that we all love, and it's like like a once in a lifetime thing, and he didn't want to go. I was told he got food poisoning, but we had been eating at the same places, so I thought it was weird, but he didn't want to go to something that we'd been planning to go to for a while, and then he just stayed up in the room.
And then towards the end of the trip, at some point, did he go missing a little bit?
Objection for relevance.
All right, objection overruled.
Thank you. Mr. Fine, at some point during the trip, did Grant Amato, the defendant in this case, kind of go missing for a little while and Cody had to go out to locate him?
Yes, it was hours before our flight back home.
Just briefly tell the jury about that.
Cody got into the shower. Grant told me that he was going to go down to the lobby and find something to eat. So I didn't think anything of it. And Cody got out of the shower and asked me where Grant was. And I said he went down to the lobby to get something to eat. And Cody immediately checked the closet for his duffel bag and then said, "Where's Grant's duffel bag?" And I was like, "Oh, I don't know. I didn't notice him take anything." And so Cody left me at the hotel for more than 2 hours. I was just kind of sitting in the lobby while he went to find Grant, and he was messaging me on WhatsApp, trying to keep me posted. And he found him at a pachinko, like a gambling type building, and I guess he was on his tablet using the Wi-Fi. And then they came back, hours later, and I was told that Grant had been fighting.
Now, while in Japan, did you give anybody permission or authorization to use your Discover credit card,
I did not.
including the defendant? Did you ever give him any permission to use your Discover credit card?
I did not.
Showing counsel States Exhibit 6Z for identification. May I approach?
Yes.
Let me show you States Exhibit 6Z for identification and ask you if you recognize that.
That is my Discover card and my passport holder / wallet.
I'd offer this into evidence as a State's Exhibit, Your Honor.
Any objection?
Objection, improper character evidence, and lack of Williams rule notice filed, Judge.
All right.
Like what? Like what?
Lack of Williams rule notice filed.
All right. Objection as previously indicated overruled. What's been pre-marked for identification as States Exhibit 6C will be moved into evidence as States Exhibit 302 in evidence.
Let me show you the State's Exhibit.
Just let me approach very briefly.
All right. You may proceed.
Let me put the State's Exhibit 302 up on the overhead. And ask you to identify the card. You mentioned also your passport holder, I think?
Yeah, it's.
Yeah, I'm just referring to the card now. Is that your credit card?
It is.
And is the number, obviously, that's depicted on the card, that's the account number for your credit card?
It is.
That's your Discover card?
It is.
And obviously, it's closed, the account is closed now, correct?
It is now, yes.
Now, at some point while you were in Japan, did you notice any charges being made on that particular card that we just displayed, States Exhibit 302?
I did.
And tell the jury about that. When did you first observe that, and then what did you do?
I was out to dinner, and I went to pay for the dinner with the Discover card, and it had been frozen. So I contacted my father, since it's like a family account, and he sent me a screenshot of three charges on the Discover. One went through, and then the other two were denied, but they were for my free cam tokens.
showing Defense Counsel States Exhibit 14K for identification. Your Honor, at this point, I'd offer evidence pursuant to business record certification of States Exhibit for identification 14K. There documents from the Discover credit card.
And there's no objection.
Other than the previous ones that we
All
already
right.
placed in the record, Judge.
Then, at this point, 14K will be moved into evidence as State's Exhibit 303 in evidence.
Now, Mr. Fine, let me put up on the overhead a particular part of this document. And direct your attention to, I'm going to, the laser pointer. Of course, it doesn't show. Where my finger is, the $299.99 for mfcbill.com tokens, December 15th. Did you, first of all, did you purchase that particular charge?
I did not.
Did you authorize anybody to purchase that particular charge,
I did not.
including the defendant? Did you authorize him?
No, I did not.
And the same question with respect to the entry right above it, the $149.99, December 15th, mfcbill.com tokens, $149.99. Did you, first of all, make that charge?
I did not.
Did you authorize anybody, including the defendant, to make that charge?
I authorized nobody.
Showing Counsel States Exhibit 6V for identification. May I approach, Your Honor? Let me show you what's been marked for identification as States Exhibit 6V. Victor, asking you, do you recognize it?
Yes, that is a picture of me with a Jericho 941, or also known as a baby eagle.
Okay, and I'd say, what kind of, is that a 9mm?
It's a 9mm.
And is that the photograph a true and accurate representation of that which it purports to depict, namely you holding that gun?
It is.
I'd offer that into evidence as a State's exhibit, Your Honor.
I believe we made a previous relevance objection, and we would re-raise that at this time, Judge.
Based upon the proffer objection overruled, what's been pre-marked for ID as, well, at this point, actually, approach. So at this point, reserve ruling.
Now, with regard to the gun that's depicted in 6V, I want to ask you some questions about it. First of all, kind of talked about this when you're looking at 6V for identification, but tell us now, what kind of handgun is that?
So, it's a semi-automatic pistol. What do you mean, what kind of handgun?
Describe it. You said it was a Jericho?
Yeah, it's a Jericho 941. I had bought it because obviously it had my name. I thought that was kind of cool. And it was from an anime that I liked. The main character used it. So that's why I was interested in it.
And when did you purchase it?
April of 2012.
And the photograph that you looked at, States Exhibit 6V, when was that photograph taken?
It was shortly after I received it. I was making a little Facebook post about it.
And what ultimately did you do with that gun? Did you sell it to anybody?
Around 2015, I sold it to my friend Blake Turpin.
And during the time that you had it, the entire time that you had it, was it modified in any way?
No.
And going back to Japan, Mr. Fine, while you were in Japan, did any of you, Cody, the defendant, discharge any firearms, go to any shooting ranges or discharge any firearms for any reason?
No, we did not.
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Good afternoon, Mr. Fine. You're saying that you bought that pistol because it had the same name as you? Is that correct?
It was one of the things that interested me about it, yeah.
Okay, along with the anime.
Yes.
Now, you said that Grant had helped you build a computer, is that correct?
Yes.
So Grant Amato is a pretty tech-savvy person, you would say, correct?
Yes.
And they knew a lot about computers and electronics, correct?
They did.
You would go over to Blake Turpin's house pretty often, is that correct?
Yes.
How often would you describe as pretty often?
We
Once a week?
tried every week.
Every week you said you'd go?
Every other week. It really depends. He's really busy.
Okay, so every week or two at the most, or at the
Yeah. What time frame are you giving me here as far as hanging out?
regularly.
But are you saying more recent?
No, I'm saying, let's just say when you all were doing this and hanging out together, it would be around every week, correct?
We're on every week, every other week.
Okay. And you said you went to Japan with Cody and Grant, that's correct?
Yes.
And this was December of 2018, correct?
Yes.
And when the picture was taken with Grant wearing the gloves, it was pretty cold that day. You had stated that earlier, isn't that correct?
It was very cold, yes.
And you all were layered up in coats and extra clothes in those photographs, is that correct?
Yes.
Do you remember what temperature it was in Fahrenheit? In Japan?
Fahrenheit?
Yeah, I know it's probably in Celsius over there, but,
It was like in the 40s,
okay.
low 40s.
So Grant wore these leather gloves when it was cold out, correct?
Yes.
And Cody paid for all of Grant's trip, isn't that correct?
I didn't know that at the time.
Oh, okay. But you believed Cody and Grant to be extremely close, is that correct?
Yes.
They did nearly everything together, isn't that correct?
Yes. It was basically our group since high school. They were part of it.
Okay, but Cody and Grant specifically they did nearly everything together, correct?
Yes, I mean, they lived together, so they would carpool wherever we were hanging out.
So not just living together, they did many, many activities together, correct?
I think it's been established, yes.
Oh, I'm saying based on what you've seen. You saw them do many activities together, many, many activities together, correct?
Yes.
And you saw nothing but a close, loving relationship between the two of them, is that correct?
Within the group, we had many fond memories. I can't say how they were outside of the group.
That's not the question. The question is, what did you see? You saw nothing but a close, loving relationship, isn't that correct?
Yes.
Just to clarify one further point, the group would go to Blake Turpin's house regularly, isn't that correct?
Again, you have to give me a time frame because he hasn't always lived at that house.
Okay, but when you all were hanging out together, during that time period, you and the group would go together to Blake Turpin's house regularly, that's correct?
When he had the house, yes.
Okay. No further questions, Judge.
Any redirect?
No.
Um, um, Any redirect?
Your Honor, maybe I do have a question.
All right.
Did- When you were in Japan, did you observe any type of dispute or friction that started to arise and did arise between Cody and the defendant, Grant Amato?
Cody seemed to be keeping Grant on a short leash. So if he would wander off or stray too far, there were a couple instances where Cody was like, Grant, here, now, like, which was a little awkward, but yes, there was some tension.
All right, thank you.
Members of the jury, do you have any questions of this witness? Okay. If you could please write it down. Approach, please. Mr. Fine, there's a question of a juror. Had you ever seen Grant shoot a gun, rifle, pistol, etc.? If so, did Grant wear gloves when shooting the gun?
I've seen him shoot many times. The times I went to the range with him, I didn't see him wearing firing gloves. And then we also did airsoft, which is like military simulation, and that was, you had gloves to protect your hands from the BBs.
Any questions based on those questions?
You mentioned aerosol. That doesn't discharge a bullet. It doesn't discharge residue from a handgun.
Oh, no, it doesn't.
Just BBs?
Just little plastic BBs. They're like electrically shot.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Fine, I'm sorry. Mr. Fine, you never saw Mr. Amato fire a firearm with gloves on? That's what you're saying?
No, I have not.
And you never saw him fire a firearm with these leather gloves that you described, obviously, as well, correct?
No, I have not.
No further questions.
Any questions, member of the jury? All right, and I'm sorry, any redirect?
No.
All right, and no indication of questions from the jury. May this witness be excused and released?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, thank you very much, sir. You're excused and you're released from your subpoena. Next witness.
Blake Turpin.
Mr. Turpin, please come forward, raise your right hand, be ready to be sworn.
You solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the complete truth, so help you God. Thank you.
Can you please have a seat, sir? You may proceed.
Before we get started, I would raise my previous objection based upon my... Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon. Can you please introduce yourself to the jury and spell your name for the court reporter?
Yes, sir. My name is Blake Turpin, BlakeTurpin.
And do you know someone named Grant Amato?
Yes, sir, I do.
How long have you known Mr. Amato?
Since we were in high school together, probably about 15 years.
And do you know someone named Cody Amato?
I do.
And how long had you known Cody Amato?
The same time frame. We met, Cody and I are the same age, so we met in our freshman year.
And do you see Grant Amato in court today? You can stand up if you need to.
Yes, sir.
And can you identify what he's wearing and where he's sitting?
The gray suit and the blue tie back there.
Is he closest to the wall, opposite you?
Yes, sir.
Let the record reflect that the victim is, the witness has identified the defendant. Now, during the course of your friendship with the defendant, have you had the opportunity to shoot firearms with him?
I have, yes.
And what kinds of firearms have you shot with the defendant?
Kind of ran the gambit, handguns, rifles, shotguns,
How many times have you been shooting with the defendant?
over a dozen.
And did you in fact attend a concealed weapons course with the defendant?
Yes, sir. Yes, I did.
And would you mind telling the jury about that particular concealed weapons course?
Sure. We had met a gentleman out at the Cocoa Police Hall and Fame. They have a museum and a combo range. He was the range master at the time, and one day when we were out there shooting, approached us about his classes. We ended up going out there to take that, and it was a bit of a more advanced class. He knew that we were part of an airsoft team where we kind of already had like similar mechanics down from playing with toys. And he had us come out there and we did various drills, different shooting exercises, both with live firearms and simunition. That is where they take a normal firearm and they convert it. So then instead of shooting, they were all 9mm handguns. So instead of shooting a normal bullet, it shoots what's essentially like a paintball bullet. So it's similar ballistically, but obviously you can practice without hurting anybody.
And how long was that course?
We were out there for a couple hours.
And while you were at that particular course, did you observe the defendant fire firearms?
Yes, sir, I did.
Did you observe the defendant fire them from various positions?
We did.
Did you observe the defendant fire a firearm from a standing position?
That's correct.
From a laying on his stomach position?
Yes.
From firing from his back?
Yes.
From using both hands?
Yeah, we did individual left and right-handed.
Did you observe the defendant engage in defensive tactics?
Yes, sir. We did a number of either disarming drills or shoot, don't shoot, several different drills to practice.
Did you observe the defendant fire a firearm while he was laying on his back upside down?
We did.
So is it fair to say that, based on your personal knowledge and observation of Grant Amato, you have seen him fire pistols from numerous positions?
That's correct.
Now, did you also indicated you did airsoft with Mr. Amato?
Yes, sir.
Tell the jury what airsoft is in this club.
Sure, sure. Airsoft is kind of similar to paintball. The main difference being all of the items you use are kind of more realistic. So instead of being like a metal pipe gun like a paintball looks like, they're simulated to look like an assault rifle or a handgun or a sniper rifle. And instead of shooting paint, they shoot little plastic BBs. We started doing that a number of years ago and formed a team, Remedy. We were pretty competitive with that and did that for years, almost every week.
And in addition to firing pistols, did you also fire shotguns?
Yeah, we did. Later, we got into clay shooting, sporting clays. And we would go out and you typically would kind of treat it like a golf course, and they'd have different targets set up, and we would shoot usually about 100 a day and then compare.
During the course of the time that you had been shooting with the defendant, can you tell the jury the kind of shot that he was?
Yeah, Grant was probably the most consistent out of all of us. Usually, most frequently, it would be Grant, Cody, and myself that would go. And we used to joke it would just be to see whether Cody and I could have a good enough day to beat Grant or who of us would have the worst day.
Now, are you familiar with shooting gloves?
Yes, sir.
Describe to the jury what shooting gloves are.
Typically, you'd wear them to protect your hands. Most frequently for us, it was on shotgun days. Because when you're loading a shell into the bottom, it could, I've definitely torn my nail off a few times because I don't tend to like them. I don't think they feel good, but.
Have had the occasion to see the defendant wear shooting gloves during the times you guys went shooting?
Yes, I have.
May I approach the witness? Actually, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and just publish 192 on the overhead. Mr. Turpin, these gloves that are Exhibit 192, would you characterize those as shooting gloves?
No, sir, I would not.
Have you ever seen Grant shoot a firearm with those gloves?
No, sir.
Now, Mr. Turpin, I want to direct your attention to approximately 2 weeks prior to January 24th, 2019. Is that yes?
Yes, sir.
Did there come an occasion 2 weeks prior to January 24th, approximately,
Sure.
that there was a get-together at your house?
There was.
And could you tell the jury who was present at this get-together?
Yes, Cody and Grant Amato, myself, and Jericho Fine.
I'm sorry, say that again.
Cody and Grant, Jericho Fine, and myself.
And could you walk us through that evening?
Sure. We had all met over at my house, and we got together and went out to dinner. Afterwards, we returned back to my home and spent a little time there.
And at your house, what were you guys doing?
We were mostly playing video games and then just watching some stuff on TV afterwards.
Okay. And now, on that day, approximately 2 weeks before January 24th, did you own any firearms?
I did, both.
And did you own a 9mm?
Yes,
Specifically a Jericho IWI 941?
that's correct.
May I approach the witness? For the record, I'm showing you Exhibit 6V as in Victor for identification purposes. Do you recognize this photograph?
I do.
And is this, what is this photograph of?
That it is Jericho Fine the day he purchased the Jericho, and yeah, just kind of cheesing for the camera.
And did you end up purchasing that firearm from Jericho?
I did.
Purchased the Jericho from Jericho?
That's correct.
Attender 6V states next.
Relevance, Your Honor.
At this point, the court's still going to reserve.
Now, at that time, you owned the Jericho IWI 946, correct?
Yes, sir.
And where did you store that particular pistol?
It was stored in my bedroom closet on there's a set of shelving that kind of runs the perimeter of the shelf, or of the closet.
And did you have any, what's the caliber of that firearm?
The Jericho is a 9mm.
And did you have any ammunition for, any 9mm ammunition in your room?
Yes, on the same shelving unit, I have a basket full of little sealed bags of range ammunition. And there was also a couple ammo cans on the ground below.
Now, to your knowledge, did the defendant know that you owned firearms 2 weeks prior to January 24th?
Yeah, absolutely.
Did he specifically know about that Jericho 941?
Yes.
How did he know? If you know.
Well, he was there the day Jericho purchased it, and he was there as well the day I purchased it from Jericho, and he purchased another gun from Cody at my previous house, and he's been shooting with us on a couple occasions and used it.
So has he actually shot that firearm before in your presence?
Yes.
Now, did there come a point in time that evening when the defendant was in the area of your room and closet unaccompanied?
There was.
And would you describe for the jury the scenario where that happened?
Sure. When we came back from dinner, we had gone out to a Japanese restaurant, and on the way back, Jericho and Grant both had indicated they needed to use the restroom. Jericho needed to do something a little more substantial, so I asked him to use the hallway bathroom. Grant, I told him he could go on back to my room and use the restroom.
So, where is the restroom in relation to your room and closet in your home?
Yep, if you walk in the door to my room, it's just a square. It's the front left corner. If you would turn right immediately, the next thing you'd find is the closet door, and just past that is the bathroom.
And so in order to go to the bathroom, one would have to enter your room.
Correct.
Now, where was the Jericho 9mm stored in your closet?
Again, on the shelving unit I have up there, I have 3 different gun boxes, and it would be inside of the box that it came in.
Now, how long can you estimate that the defendant was up in the area of your room?
I would say no more than 10 minutes. I was playing the game out front with Cody.
And to your knowledge, was anyone else up in your room other than other than Mr. Amato?
No, that's pretty rare. I don't usually send people back there. I also have a pit bull, and I tend to keep my door shut when we're home and when I'm not home, because I don't like him in there crawling around on the bed.
Could the firearm have been visible in your room from either going to or coming from the restroom in your room?
Yes, sir. I always keep that closet door open. I have 2 sets of just like the cheap metal hanging shoe racks where I have all my shoes up there. And if I close the door, it kind of scratches up the door frame. So the door is typically open.
Does anyone else live with you at that home at the time?
Yeah, my brother does live with me.
And does your brother have any occasion to go into your room?
Very rarely.
Do you even remember the last time he was in your room?
Just if he came to ask me a question. Yeah.
Now, at some point after the shooting deaths of Margaret, Cody, and Chad Amato, did you have an occasion to go through your closet?
I did. In particular, in the end of May, I stopped a full-time position and was taking a little sabbatical, doing contract work. A couple weeks in, I got antsy and started doing some spring cleaning. I went into the closet and was getting rid of some older stuff. And when I picked up the gun boxes, I noticed that one was significantly lighter than it should be. I opened it up and noticed the firearm and one of the 2 magazines it came with were missing.
Now, did you happen to notice if any ammunition was missing?
I did. As I continued to go through the closet, I noticed the basket. Like I said, when you buy range ammo, it tends to do bulk. So usually I buy 1,000 rounds, and they come in little sealed bags. One of those bags had been kind of picked open, and I went through and double-checked, and there were 94 out of the 100 rounds still in the bag. I checked the whole closet, moved the shelf under it, didn't see anything lying on the floor.
But just so we're clear, the bags themselves, they're not like Ziploc. Are they Ziploc bags?
No, they're kind of like heat-sealed, closed.
In order to open it, you actually have to tear the...
Correct.
Okay. And throughout your years and times you've been shooting, have you ever yourself tore a bag open partially like that and taken out just a handful of bullets?
No, the ammo that I buy that comes in those bags is, like I said, just cheap, ranged, repackaged ammo. So when I go to the range, I would take the little ammo can, which is, the little bucket, and if I needed to put more, I'd open the bag, dump the whole thing in. I do have a concealed carry gun, but I don't load it with the range ammo. I have a different, nicer bullet that goes in that one.
And you said you did some spring cleaning,
Yes.
and you discovered the missing firearm and bullets. Did you do a thorough search to see if anything else was missing in your room or in your closet?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I tore through the whole house. There was 4 other firearms in the closet, None of my electronics, guitars, cash, nothing else was missing from the house.
And that night, or that afternoon, do you remember what the defendant was wearing?
Jeans and a t-shirt and one of his jackets.
Did he always wear jackets or frequently wear jackets?
Pretty regularly. He tended to get cold.
Now, I have some other questions for you.
Yes, sir.
Now, have you been to the Amato household at 2112 Sultan Circle previously?
I have.
How many times do you think you've been there?
Probably inside the home, probably, between 5, 10 times. Been there more. Used to stop on the way to Airsoft sometimes, and we'd meet there and then drive on to the range past them.
And during the times that you were at the Amato household, did you ever have the occasion to see Chad Amato?
Yes, sir.
And during the times that you were at the Amato household, did you ever see Chad Amato carrying a firearm on his hip?
No, I've never seen Chad carrying a gun.
Now, I want to just jump back for a minute with regard to the missing firearm, the stolen firearm.
Yes, sir.
Did you report that missing at some point in time?
I did.
When was that?
I discovered it missing at like 10 o'clock at night. The following morning, I contacted the sheriff office.
And did you make a report?
I did.
And how far out from that event did you make the report?
From discovering it or I'm sorry.
When did you make a report with the police indicating that the firearm was missing?
Oh, June. June, I don't remember the exact date.
So
but
about 6
June
months later?
Correct.
Why the delay?
I hadn't had a reason to go touch that gun. I have one that I use as a concealed carry. The rest are either one I don't like to shoot or like the Jericho was kind of one I consider just a range gun. And honestly, I mean, my friend was killed in January with his parents, and I had no reason to touch my guns.
And so the spring cleaning you did was pretty much spring or summer, actually.
Sure. Summer cleaning, sure.
Okay. Now, I want to ask you some questions about Cody Amato.
Yes, sir.
Do you have, how many times have you hung out with Cody Amato?
I couldn't even count.
Many times?
Many, many times. I mean, we would try to get together as close to weekly as we could when work would permit.
And how many times had you gone shooting with Cody Amato?
So, like I say, over a dozen. I don't know the exact figure. But
And did you have the occasion to have conversations and observe Cody Amato and how he treated his firearms?
yes, sir.
Now, are you familiar with Cody Amato's carry gun?
I am.
M&P Core 9mm?
Yep, the 2.0, if I'm not mistaken.
And was that one of Cody's favorite guns?
Yeah, he had purchased that not too long ago, and actually that's what I carry now because I had gone to the range with him and shot that one.
And would you characterize that as more of a range gun or a concealed carry gun?
It's a carry gun for me. Yeah, it was for him as well.
Now, you sort of mentioned earlier about different types of ammunition,
Yes, sir.
range ammo and ammunition you use for concealed carry.
Mhm.
Have you seen the different types of ammunition as it relates to concealed carry ammunition or defense ammunition and range ammunition?
In general or Cody's?
Yes, in general.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, typically if you take stuff to the range, you buy the cheapest you can that doesn't misfire. And concealed carry, or defense ammunition tends to be, nicer. There's different perks to it. It shoots higher velocity, stuff like that. But you wouldn't use the same typically.
So, based on your knowledge and habits of Cody,
Sure.
that particular firearm, would it be unusual for Cody to have put PMC range rounds in his carry gun if he wasn't carrying?
Yeah, that would be strange. He typically uses, starts with a G. It's something fancier. I can't remember, but PMC was range ammo for him.
And based on your knowledge of Cody Amato and his habits with firearms, would he leave his gun, that particular gun,
Mhm.
in his car locked up while he was at work?
Typically, no, he's not really comfortable leaving it locked in the car.
And when he was with you in January, those times, was he carrying that particular firearm then?
In January, I don't believe he was, no.
Okay, was he carrying a different firearm?
I didn't see any.
Now, would it be common for Cody to carry that particular firearm, that NMP 204 firearm, the pistol,
Right.
loose in a bag?
No, that firearm doesn't have a safety. You have to, when you carry a gun for concealed carry, and, if you're, I don't want to say serious, but if you shared Cody and my perspective on this, you have it ready to fire, and a gun like that, you would never carry loose. You would have to carry it in either like a hard plastic or a solid case. Otherwise, you don't want anything touching the trigger.
So you wouldn't want to have it jangling around in your backpack?
No, you'd risk
And
catastrophe.
if you were to carry it on your person, you'd have to carry it in a holster.
Absolutely.
And that's because there's no safety on that firearm.
Correct, yeah, the does not have a safety.
I want to ask you about 9mm full metal Magnum Research Baby Eagle. That's a lot of words.
Sure.
Can you tell me the other name for that particular firearm?
Yeah, it's the Jericho 941. IWI makes the Jericho. The particular version that I had was distributed here in the States by Magnum Research.
Testify about the makings of a firearm.
Approach.
Mr. Turpin, to back up,
Yes, sir.
the IWI, another name for the Jericho 941 is Metal Magnum Research Baby Eagle.
Yeah.
Mr. Turpin,
Yes, sir.
between January of 2019 and June of 2019, can you describe whether you had a lot of folks over during that time period?
Yeah, no, I'm pretty private with my house. It's not a large house, so it's not really one for entertaining. It's only like 1,000 square feet. I don't bring people from work over. I mean, typically the only people that would come to my house would be Cody, Grant, Jericho, Ryan, Alyssa, like my parents. But not a lot of people.
Nothing further this time.
All right.
Evening, Mr. Turpin.
Are you, sir?
You went to high school with Cody and Grant?
Yes, sir.
Now, Cody was older than Grant by a couple of years, right?
Yes,
I believe you testified that you met Cody in high school?
that's correct.
Is it fair to say you met Cody before you met Grant?
Yeah, Cody and I were in the same grade. Grant was 1 year behind.
Okay, so you had known, correct me if I'm wrong, is it fair to say that you knew Cody for about a year before you met Grant?
Not quite a full year. I didn't really meet Cody until the latter half of freshman year.
Yes, sir. And you guys became friends throughout high school?
Correct.
Okay, what high school did you go to?
Timber Creek.
Okay. During your high school years, did you guys shoot guns together?
Not in high school, no.
A little bit too young then, right?
Correct.
Okay. When did you start beginning to shoot guns with the Amatos?
That would have been sometime in college.
College?
Probably 2011, 2012.
Okay. You testified about your gun training, that you went to this, what you call a sort of an advanced training?
Yes, sir. It was a little more than like your typical concealed carry class.
Okay, and that was for about 2 hours?
I think it was a little longer than that, but at least 2 hours.
Where was it at?
It was at the Police Hall of Fame Museum and Range out in Cocoa.
Okay, do you remember about the time period that happened?
In again, 2012, I think.
2012?
Yeah.
Okay, about 7 years ago? Or
Yes, sir.
maybe less, 6 years ago,
Sure.
give or take a year. How many people were in that class?
There were 5 of us:
Who were the 5?
Cody, Grant, myself, Jericho, and Marcos Colon.
Marcos? Okay. You talked about your airsoft team, Remedy.
Correct.
Who was in that airsoft team?
Cody, Grant, myself, Ryan, Jericho, Marcos, some other people.
Okay. It sounds like that was the team that also attended gun training?
Some of, yeah, not the whole team.
Okay. And that lasted about 2 hours, right?
Again, thereabout, I think it was a little
Okay.
longer.
Was it one instructor?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So it wasn't much individualized attention, was it? Just kind of a general class, self-defense?
There was a little bit. It was back and forth between group setting and then individually chatting about form and
Okay. And your airsoft team, Remedy, you guys said you got together every week and,
as frequently as possible. It didn't hit every week for years, but there were instances where we did every week, sometimes twice a week, sometimes once a month.
so it's fair to say Remedy was a pretty tight-knit group?
Absolutely.
Okay. You were asked about shooting gloves, and you were showed a picture of the shooting gloves. Your experience, those aren't shooting gloves, are they? That you saw the picture of?
I would not say those are shooting gloves, no.
Okay. You said you've seen Grant use gloves before to shoot?
I have seen him use gloves to shoot before, yes.
Okay. Can you describe to us what like a shooting glove would be like as opposed to what you saw in the picture?
Well, those were more of a black leather, like I said, with the shotguns, if you loaded that, you're likely to tear them. Typically, like a black cloth with either some harder section, like plastic or something.
Yeah, they'd have to be kind of thin, right? Get your hands in the...
Yeah, it definitely would still,
Okay.
give
And
protection.
you, yes, sir, I'm sorry. And you testified that you guys would often go out to eat together, the gang, the group, however you want to call it, and
Sure.
go out to dinner, then you'd go to your place and hang out?
Yeah,
Okay. And you said maybe once a week, maybe every other week, so it was pretty regular, wasn't it?
absolutely.
Okay. In fact, your home would probably be characterized as like the home base where everybody hung out?
I would say, yeah, because, Cody and Grant live out here in Seminole. Some of us live far east, or like mine is kind of central to the places we'd like to go, downtown or iDrive or.
Okay. And that continued throughout the years?
Mhm.
Okay. Now, you directed your attention to January of this year,
Yes, sir.
correct? And you guys, the gang went out to eat and had Japanese food?
That's correct.
It's kind of ironic they had Japanese food after just coming back from Japan, wasn't it?
Yeah, 2 weeks in a row. They love their Japan.
Okay, so all you guys go back to your place?
We did that night,
Just-
yes.
Just like normal?
Yeah.
No big deal?
Mhm.
Okay. And Jericho had to use the restroom, but you say something more substantial, I assume that's number 2?
Yeah, that'd be correct.
Okay. And then you let Grant use your bathroom in your room?
Correct.
Okay, he was gone, I think you testified about 10 minutes?
Max, we
Max.
were, playing those, a game, and usually it's a couple songs long, so.
Okay. And you just, I assume, just had to urinate, so that's about the right time?
Well, yeah, something like that, yeah.
Nothing unusual came to your mind, right?
Not then,
Not then?
not at the time,
Okay.
no.
Now, how many firearms do you own, Mr. Turpin?
Well, now, 4.
4? Can you tell us what type of firearms you own?
Yeah, I have the M&P full-size 2.0. I have an M&P Shield, which is a .45 caliber. I have a rifle, 5.56 rifle, and I have a Benelli Super Sport clay shotgun.
Back in January of this year, was it about the same guns you own?
Well, I had one more
One more?
in January.
One more, the Jericho.
Yes, sir,
Now, you have your concealed weapons permit, right?
I do.
Okay. And you had to take classes to get that, didn't you?
That's correct.
And I assume you take gun ownership very responsibly?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I won't get there yet. Okay. You also stored ammunition in your bedroom?
I did, do.
Okay. In that closet or that,
Closet, yes.
is it fair to say it's a closet?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Okay. And you said you had a bucket of ammunition?
Yeah, like a ammo can. Yeah, it's like a little plastic container about yay big, has a latch.
Okay, you just dump bullets freely in there?
Yeah,
Okay. You would have no idea, I guess you could guess, how many bullets would be in that can?
no, a couple hundred. I just take the bags and refill as needed.
Okay, are they different types of bullets, or are they all of the same caliber?
The bucket specifically?
Yes.
I have two buckets. One is 9mm and one is the 5.56.
Okay, so back in January, you had a bucket of 9 millimeters?
That's correct?
Okay. You don't know the exact amount that was in there?
No,
Okay. And you also had ammunition in bags?
correct.
The bucket, does the bucket have a lid on it?
It does. and
How
a
do you
little-
open it?
Closes, it's rectangular, there's a latch on the side, opens up, close it, close the latch.
Readily visible?
Those, not as much. I have, it's like a little tiered, like cube storage thing. And I have those on the bottom. And there's like blankets and stuff hanging off of it, but
Yes, sir. Is there a door to your closet?
there is,
Okay, was it open that night, to the best of
Yeah.
your recollection?
yes.
Always keep it open?
Yes.
Is it a sliding door, or is it an opening?
No, it's a normal latch.
On hinges?
open.
You just
Yeah, hinges,
open it
yes, sir.
up? Is it a walk-in closet?
Barely, it's not very big.
So if I'm walking through and I see your closet with the door open, I would be able to see the gun cases you're talking about?
The gun case that stored the guns?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
What about the ammunition buckets? Would I be able to see those?
Well, those are on the ground, those would be less visible.
Okay, but if I look sort of like that trash, or you can't see the trash can, or this briefcase, I would be able to see it?
Yeah, if you looked around, sure.
Flip it open, and I could grab a handful of bullets, couldn't I?
Sure.
Okay. The particular gun we're talking about, Jericho, the one you purchased in 2015? Is that
About
right?
there, yeah,
Okay. You had it for 3 years, and you stored it in a gun case.
that's correct,
You had 3 gun cases in the closet,
correct.
stacked up with each other?
No, stacked side by side.
Okay, if I'm looking in your closet and I see the gun case, which one's the Jericho?
The Jericho is the first one.
The first one, to the left?
So if you walk into the closet, this is the shelf on the side here, and they're stacked Jericho, my empty 9mm case for the concealed carry, the 45.
Okay. From looking at the gun cases on the outside, would you be able to tell what type of gun is inside that case?
The outside of the case says Magnum Research, so you would know.
Which gun case? The middle one, or?
The closest case that held the Jericho, it has Magnum Research printed on it.
Okay, what about the other two?
They both have Smith & Wesson printed on it.
Okay. Had you ever seen Grant fire that Jericho before?
I have,
That was years ago?
yes, sir,
And the reason you purchased it from Jericho, fine.
correct.
And Jericho thought it was cool because it had his name on it. Jericho Helens, a Jericho gun.
And he's half Jewish as well, so,
Okay.
yes.
So this is in January. Now, 6 months later, in fact, June the 11th
Yes, sir,
is when you filed the report with Orange County?
that sounds correct.
Okay. That would be 4 days before, no, I'm sorry, a month before this trial started, correct?
Correct,
And that's when you discovered that that gun was missing
yes, sir.
in June. Between January and June, had you shot any guns at all?
No.
Okay. And in January, late January, you obviously were informed about the unfortunate tragedy with your friend Cody Amato.
Yes,
Okay? And I'm sorry for your loss, sir. But I'm going to have to ask you some questions about that, okay?
sure,
You know Jason Amato?
yes,
You subsequently learned in late January, early February, that Grant Amato had been arrested for the shooting deaths of Cody, Chad, and Margaret, Mrs. Amato, correct?
yes, sir.
Obviously, that had to have been very upsetting. You knew Jason Amato? You know Jason Amato?
I do now. I didn't, I'd only seen him briefly prior.
In fact, you know him now because you're in pretty regular contact with him, aren't you?
I've talked, yes,
You talk to him regularly, don't you?
mostly here,
Mostly here?
yeah,
Talking about the case?
catching up.
Catching up?
Yeah,
Yeah, and you knew the facts and the circumstances of the case, correct?
From following, yeah, some of it.
You knew that one of the facts of this case is that the prosecution does not have a firearm for this case, do they?
There was, yeah, I know there's not been a firearm recovered.
You know there's not been a firearm recovered, correct?
Correct.
Have you discussed that with Jason?
With Jason?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think so.
Okay. And you had testified you're serious about your guns.
Sure. Fine.
When you made that report in June with the Orange County Sheriff's Office, isn't it true that you had told them you had not seen that gun since June of 2018?
No, what I'd actually told the officer was that I had not taken it out shooting since the previous summer. The last time I went to the range, I had paid cash, so I did not have a credit card statement to say exactly when it was. So when I told him sometime last year, I was instructed to just June.
Would the police report refresh your memory? Or let me ask you this, isn't it true that you told the Sheriff's Office the last time you used and saw that firearm was in June of 2018?
Again, specifically, what I told him was I had not used it since the year prior. What was put down was June because it was reported in June.
It was reported in June of 2019, but you told the Orange County Sheriff's Office you had not seen that firearm since June of 2018, 12 months prior, correct?
What I had told him was I had not used the rifle, or the handgun, in about a year. And then because I could not pin the exact date, it was marked down as June of 18 because that was 1 year prior.
My approach to witness, Your Honor. I'll show you the marked as Defendant's Exhibit C.
Yes, sir.
If you could, sir, would you read the body of that offense report?
Starting June 11, right there?
Yes, sir.
Sure. On June 11, 20.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, read it to yourself.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Sorry. Done?
Yes, sir.
So according to the report, it was the last time you saw it was June of 2018.
That's what he put, yes, sir.
Now, from June 2018 to January 2019, you guys were still hanging out at your house, weekly dinners, things like that, people coming over?
Yes, sir.
You could have been taken at any time, right?
I don't, theoretically.
Theoretically?
Sure.
Okay. The last time you saw that firearm was when you used it at a gun range, right?
Correct.
Okay. And you don't recall maybe you left it in your car?
Wouldn't do that. It
You wouldn't do that?
No, sir. You can't take a unboxed firearm out of a range.
Okay. So a year later, you know that the prosecution doesn't have a firearm in this case, and 30 days before the trial starts, you file a missing gun report.
Correct.
And you've been talking to Jason regularly, right?
I had been talking to Jason, yes, sir.
And based upon your conversations with Jason, this case has to be resolved before he can do anything with the estate, correct?
Objection.
Sorry?
Have you talked to Jason about the status of the Amato estate?
Objection.
When's the last time you talked to Jason Amato?
Saw him briefly last week when we were waiting here.
Okay. Have you met with the state attorney in this case?
I have.
And you discussed with the state attorney about this gun that you supposedly lost in January, correct?
Yes.
When did you first talk to the state attorney about that?
A couple days after the report, I don't remember exactly.
A day after the report?
I think it was a couple, I don't recall specifically.
But before June, you knew that the prosecution did not have a firearm, didn't you?
Ask that answered.
So just out of nowhere, 6 months later, 30 days before the trial starts, you can't find a firearm that you haven't seen in 12 months.
That's correct.
Would you call that responsible gun ownership?
I would say for years, the gun sat in my shelf safely.
For years?
Yes.
Well, since June 2018, when you last saw it at a fire range, or gun range, right?
Prior to that, that gun had always stayed in the same place, same as all my other firearms.
And just by happenstance, 12 months later, you filed the report.
Again, yes, when I noticed the gun was missing, I filed a report.
Thank you, Mr. Turpin.
Can you redirect?
Mr. Turpin,
Yes, sir.
nothing else was taken from your room?
That's correct.
No other firearm was taken?
No, sir.
The firearm that was taken was one that the defendant had previously shot.
Correct?
Did the defendant know that that firearm was in that closet?
He
False
does-
speculation.
Do you know if Grant Amato knew where you kept your firearm?
Yes.
Did he know where you kept your firearm?
In my room, yes.
On the cross-examination, counsel for the defense made mention of this concealed weapons course that you attended with the defendant and Cody Amato a number of years ago.
Yes, sir.
And from my recollection, I believe he said it was a couple hours long and not individualized and sort of characterize it in that manner. Is that a fair assessment?
That's what he mentioned, yes.
May I approach the clerk? May I approach the witness? I'm showing you State's Exhibit 15E for identification purposes, 15F for identification purposes, 15G for identification purposes, 15H for identification purposes, 15I for identification purposes, 15... Oh, the very last one? P? Yes, ma'am.
Okay. One question, how much longer do you anticipate?
5 minutes?
All right, we've got jurors who have to leave. I don't know if you can make any arrangements or not if you wanted to, or if it's too late. Okay. So what we're going to do is, at this point, we're going to have Mr. Turpin come back tomorrow. All right, we're going to start him at 8:30 because we have a juror who has to go at this point to pick up children.
Yes.
Okay? So, then, remember, members of the jury, do not talk about this case with anyone. Whatever questions you have or circumstances, we can deal with tomorrow. Mr. Turpin, you're not allowed to speak to anyone at all, including any of the attorneys at this point, because you're still technically under oath and you're still on the stand. All right? You're going to be coming back tomorrow. We're going to start at 8:30 tomorrow morning, so if you guys could get here right at 8:15. Okay? We did not anticipate this witness lasting this long, otherwise we would have taken a break earlier. All right, so thank you, everyone. Have a good night, and we will see you tomorrow. Yes.
Thank you.
One moment, I'll give you more instruction. One moment. All right, okay, you may be seated. Mr. Turpin, when you come tomorrow morning, you just go in the witness room, in the conference room in the front, wait for the court deputy to come and get you. Please be here early by 8:15 or so to make sure that we can start right up at 8:30.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay? All right. Otherwise, we can, at this point, we will be in recess until tomorrow morning. And otherwise, I'm going to try and plan and let the jury know to try and plan on being late tomorrow, because that way we can go through to make sure that we're going through some of the witnesses and getting all the witnesses done, just in case, so she'll be able to make arrangements.
Can we talk about that briefly, about scheduling?
Yes.
Because there is one witness who, I think, the very last witness, who has a practical...
You're free to go, Mr. Turpin.